Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Amber Valley series. There are 35 parishes in this beautiful slice of eastern Derbyshire. Here's one for your viewing pleasure. Welcome back to Amber Valley, everybody. Now, before I get going this one, I need to decide if I'm going to wear a coat or not, because as you can see, it is raining, but it's only really light rain. Is it worth putting a coat on? It's awkward weather. It's what I would call awkward weather. Anyway, that's the weather we're going to have walking around this place. It's got a very interesting name, Ironville. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Amber Valley this week brings us to the far eastern reaches of the district, where Derbyshire meets Nottinghamshire. This was once historically a very industrial landscape, and Ironville is possibly Derbyshire's best example of a mid-19th century model village. The village itself was mainly created between 1834 and 1860 by the Butterley Company to house workers at Codnor Park Ironworks, the site of which falls within Ironville's boundaries. Codnor Park was an extremely important works. It manufactured all kinds of things, including armour plate for the very first iron-hulled warships, such as the Warrior and the Black Prince, and cannonballs used in the Battle of Waterloo. During World War II, the works also produced 51 large bridges, which were used for crossing the Rhine and Italian rivers. Ironville's name then is pretty simple to understand. It was literally the Iron Village. The model village which was built here won much national acclaim, with its large gardens, a rural setting well away from the ironworks, and an overall spacious layout compared with other industrial villages. It looks a little different today. The ironworks no longer exist, but you can still see the industrial scars on the landscape, including the now derelict Cromford Canal and its locks. Some of the village has been modernised, but if you know where to go, you can certainly see the remains of times past. Let's go and find them all, shall we? So as you can see, I opted for the coat because as I was making that intro piece, the rain started to fall a little bit heavier. I might regret this by the end though, because it is really muggy out here today, so I'll be dying to get this off if the rain stops. Anyway, let's go for a walk around. We're beginning on Casson Street, the end of Casson Street, and we're heading this way to start with, into these trees. Our first landmark is a reservoir. There are two main features in Ironville Parish which made the place what it is today. One of them is the Cromford Canal. The canal took its water from 3 strategically placed reservoirs, and this, Codnor Park Reservoir, was one of them. The other two were Butterley Reservoir and Butterley Park Reservoir, the latter of which has now been filled in. Since the Cromford Canal is now disused, so too is Codnor Park Reservoir for its original purpose, but the local anglers still like it. The Cromford Canal joins the reservoir here, and this is one of its bridges, dating from 1793. It looks a little oddly sited. Let's not forget though that the landscape has changed somewhat since the canal was last in use. There are a series of bridges like this over the canal. A little later, we'll come to another one over the canal itself. Codnor Park Reservoir and this bridge are an easy walk away from Ironville's village centre. Let's go there now. Market Street is one of a series of terraced roads built in the 1850s and 1860s. This was the last part of Ironville to be built. These stand on a cinder bank that served to fill in a former clay pit, hence the name of Cinder Bank, Ironville's main through route. So strictly speaking, here in Ironville, you've got two areas. You've got Ironville to the north and Codnor Park to the south, and they're split in half by the Cromford Canal. We're going to cross the Cromford Canal now and go into Codnor Park and see what that's like. Even though Codnor Park is a separate settlement, it's always been closely associated with Ironville, thanks to the ironworks. We're now crossing the canal into Codnor Park via Cinder Bank. We'll be seeing a lot more of this watery feature in a bit. Just over the canal is Railway House. This is where two lines from the ironworks merged and crossed this road, continuing to Ripley. Here's the Ironville and Codnor Park Club. This goes by the alternative name of the Crossings Club, thanks to that piece of railway history. It bears a date of 1913 and features its own Skittles and Dominoes teams, with live entertainment every Saturday. We're on Monument Lane now, and after the club, the road starts to climb up a hill. Codnor Park is mostly modern housing. In fact, on streets like Piper's Court, you wouldn't know you were in an area once dominated by heavy industry. Now, there's a reason why Monument Lane is called Monument Lane. We'll discover that towards the end of this video though, because that's something I'm going to have to drive to. So off New Road, you've got a little playground. Not the biggest one in the world, but you know what? It's a playground and it's probably good enough for all the local children. Let's carry on up here. We're going to turn left in a moment and we're heading towards the site of Codnor Park Ironworks. We're now on Station Road, and in the distance over there you can see part of the site of Codnor Park Ironworks. Before the ironworks were here, this was an ancient deer park, hence the name Codnor Park. It's great how it all makes sense, right? Close to the ironworks entrance is Forge Row. These cottages would have been one of the first rows built for Codnor Park's ironworkers. Just 50 metres away from this gate is the site of the ironworks, and there's a helpful little board which tells you some of its history. They were established in 1810 by the Butterley Company, originally producing cast iron and wrought iron as well as steel. They were served by a railway line and a railway station, built much later in 1847. The line still exists, it's the Erewash Valley Line. However, the station has now gone. It was called Codnor Park and Ironville and closed in 1967, 2 years after the ironworks. The ironworks were dismantled in the early 1970s, leaving behind a vast industrial scar. However, now, this is quite a pleasant area. The site has now been transformed into the Erewash Valley Nature Reserve, and it's planted with lots of native trees. So it's amazing to think as you walk through these trees that this was the site of an ironworks that was producing cannonballs for Waterloo at one point. It's absolutely incredible. And of course now all that heavy industry has disappeared, replaced with this lush greenery, this nature reserve. And you can walk all the way through this to the Cromford Canal, and that's what I'm doing right now. I'm heading up this rather boggy path which will take you to the canal. Once we reach it, I need to take a right turn and then a left over a bridge to get to the other side, because that will be the only way from here that we can get back into Ironville village. Might take me a while. I've got to be careful not to slip because it's raining quite heavily here and it's wet underfoot, so at least I've got these nice trees to keep me company for a bit. The ironworks could not have existed without the Cromford Canal. This next section takes us along its towpath back to Ironville. This is one of its former locks. There were 14 of these in total, and there were also 4 tunnels along its length too. The Cromford Canal ran for 14.5 miles from Cromford to Langley Mill, where it joined the Erewash and Nottingham canals. Built by William Jessup and Benjamin Outram, it opened in 1794 and for many years carried coal, limestone, iron ore and lead. As with many other canals, however, it suffered from railway competition. Ironically, the Erewash Valley Line crosses the canal here. Its death knell came in 1900 when the Butterley Tunnel had to be closed due to subsidence. The southern stretch, though, remained open until 1944. Today there's an active restoration society, the Friends of the Cromford Canal, that hopes to eventually reopen it for navigation. As we approach Ironville again, a tall, handsome building appears on the opposite side of the canal. That's Butterley Court. It's a block of flats now, but this was originally the Mechanics' Institute, and it was built in 1846 for the Butterley Company's employees. It looks like an old brewery, and in fact it was. It stands on the former Codnor Park Brewery, originally built in 1825 by Samuel Wragg. So through the deluge of rain that's currently falling from the sky, we have found our way back to Ironville. Now we're going to cross this little bridge here next to Butterley Court. It will take us up into Ironville village proper. There's still plenty of things to see here, including the school and the church and even a shop as well. Ironville's definitely got a lot. At the end of a road called Deepdale is Ironville's sports and recreational area. This has all the usual facilities you'd expect it to. There's a football pitch or two, a basketball court and a large playground, but there's also a very unusual feature in one corner. This former train carriage has for over 20 years been the Ironville Youth Centre. It's had issues in the past though, see below for those. Now we're making our way up to Victoria Street. On the left you can see Regent Court, part of Ironville's modern village centre. On a street called Open Acre is the Ironville Community Centre. I guess you could term this the modern village hall. Here we are then on Victoria Street, which was constructed in 1837, followed by Albert Street, Tank Street and Meadow Street. It's here where you can catch 2 buses, the 90 to Ripley or Sutton in Ashfield, or the Rainbow 1 to Nottingham or Alfreton. So when I turned the corner onto Victoria Street, I thought this was like a village green because it looked very similar, but it turns out these are actually gardens. They're just an extension of the back gardens of this street here. So they have a plot which is beyond their external wall, I suppose. That certainly seems to be the case anyway. So it's not a village green, but it looks very much like it could be one. So anyway, now we're going to take a turn down King William Street. This will take us towards the shop, and then we'll make a loop back towards the school, and then the church is the last thing on our list. So there's still a little bit of walking to do, but thankfully not much in this rain. King William Street was Ironville's first street. It was built in 1834 and looks a lot different now to what it would have done a century ago. It was demolished and modernised in the 1970s, but at one time this is where all the shops and local amenities were sited. That's not to say Ironville is without them now. It still does have them, but they're in a different place, up this hill. These steps provide you with a view across the village centre, with the ironworks site and railway line visible in the background. Queen Street is where you'll find the local shop, which now doubles as the post office. Next to this is Ironville's most iconic house. Named Ironville House, this is a former doctor's house with an attached surgery. This was built by a local mine owner from iron slag lump. Next door is Clowns, which is a much more modern day nursery. And speaking of education, these are right opposite the school. The Butterley Company were thoughtful enough to provide not just housing for workers, but also education for the workers' children. By 1850, Ironville had not only schools but a complete range of public services. The school, built in 1841, is still going strong. And facing the school you have the church. Here we are, with the War Memorial in front of the tower, and a clock which is showing the right time, 1:45. This is our last landmark. Let's talk about this to finish. The War Memorial at Christ Church was erected in 1923. This displays a total of 44 names, 35 from World War I and 9 from World War II. Christ Church is not your average religious building. Because Ironville was built in the 1830s, this church has no medieval history. It is, of course, pretty new. It was built between 1851 and 52 to the designs of Henry Isaac Stevens for the Butterley Company. It's Grade 2 listed and was consecrated in 1852 by the Bishop of Lichfield. It's in a joint ecclesiastical parish with St James's Church at Riddings. Other than that, there's not much that can be said about this one. It's open every Sunday at 11 AM for 1 hour. Next door is the Church Hall, better known to many as the Anvil Club. It's a social club ideal for many village events. It holds something called a meat draw every Friday, essentially a raffle where the prizes are various cuts of meat. And that brings us to the end of the walk around Ironville. From here, all I have to do is walk to the end of Casson Street and we are around the circuit. But we're not quite done with Ironville just yet, because I mentioned earlier a monument, and that's the William Jessup Monument. We need to go down Monument Lane to find that. That's going to be our last thing in this episode. You know what they say about all the best laid plans? I can't get. Private road, no vehicle access. It's not that far to walk, but to be honest with you, in this rain, I just really can't be bothered to walk down there, to be honest with you. You know, it's literally just round that bend over there. But you know what? I needed a special section for this episode anyway, so I guess that's what it's going to be. Monument Lane is named for this structure, the William Jessup Monument, a 70-foot high Doric column. This does not commemorate William Jessup, the canal engineer, rather it's for the work of his son, William Jessup Jr., who died in 1863. Jessup Jr. was a partner of the Butterley Company. The column was built in 1854, 9 years before his death, so it's wrong to call this a memorial. Not only is there the column, there's also a spacious memorial hall too. The column has a viewing platform reached by a spiral staircase of 150 steps. The monument was severely damaged by a lightning strike in 1861, though it continued to be used despite its precarious condition for years afterwards. On one occasion, the French tightrope walker Blondin walked a line from the top of the monument to the ground. Both the column and the hall were restored in 2007, but they're not accessible to the public, even though you can walk to them. And that'll do us for Ironville. After following Monument Lane back down the hill and turning left at Coach Road, I was on my way to the next one. There's still lots more industrially important history to cover in Amber Valley, so come back next week as we explore another one with a similar storied past. Bye for now. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.